Hello guys, sorry for the delay to release the new video for the Orisa. In this video, we will set up the bow for the Orisa. I want to begin this video with a little bit of model editing to remove the weapons from the character and then import it again in UE4. Run the Blender and delete all the default assets from the scene. Import the Orisa model that we converted from the base character to UE4 skeleton in the previous video. Select the weapons and delete them. Now we can export the character model to UE4 again. Import the character inside UE4. As you can see, the skeleton is selected by default. Otherwise, you can find the skeleton from the list, and we don't need to import animations. Also, uncheck the Create Physics asset. As you can see, the new model has no weapon. Now save the skeleton and restart UE4. Now you can delete the previous character model. In the first step, let's create a player character class for Orisa. Go to Ultimate Character, inside the Blueprints folder, go to the Characters folder. Now right-click on the player character _BP and create a child blueprint class and change the name. Now if you open up the new class, on the top right corner, you should see player character BP. Now we can select the Orisa mesh for our character class. Move and rotate the mesh to the correct position. Add the character tag. For example, in this case, we can use Orisa. Now we need an animation blueprint for her. Animation blueprint is the only part you need to create manually in the Ultimate Character project. Just right-click on the mesh, and from the Create menu, select the Anim blueprint. In the event graph, the Begin Play event is a good place to create a reference to the character class. Now right-click and find the Try Get Pawn Owner node and cast it to the base character _BP, because we will be able to use this class for both player and AI versions in the future. To update animations, we need to read animation data from the character class on each frame. So let's create a new function and call it from the Update Animation event. Before running the function, let's make sure the pawn is valid. Otherwise, try to get the pawn. To get all necessary animation data, just call the getAnimationGeneralData function from the pawn and store them into new variables. If the character is equipped with a weapon, we need to check if the weapon is a sword or not. Now try to get the first equipped weapon from the pawn class. Do a pure cast to base melee to check if the weapon is a sword or not. Then cast it again to base bow underscore BP to get the bow bending amount function and store the result into a variable. In the next step, we need to calculate the aim offset for the bow aiming by using the getAimOffset function in the pawn class and store it into a variable. As we can use this animation class for both AI and player characters, we need to add some specific checks for them. For example, we need alert mode only for AI character, so let's class our pawn class to AI character and then store the alert to a variable. Also, we need the focus on the enemy function just for the player. So if cast to the AI character failed, the character is a player, so we can update the focus variable. Now, if the player character is in the focusing mode, or the AI character is in the alert mode, or the character is targeting, we need to update the movement direction. So to do that, we can use the calculate direction function. Event graph is done. Now we need to create our blend spaces. Right-click in the content browser, and from the animation menu, find the blend space. We can use the horizontal axis for our direction. Direction must be between -180 to 180, and the vertical axis for the speed. And speed must be from 0 to 1, and we just need 2 divisions for the speed. We can set interpolation to 3. I've downloaded and converted all the animations we need for this character using the same method in the previous video. When the speed is 0, we can use the idle animations, so drag and drop idle animation on the graph. When the direction is 0 and speed is 1, we need walk forward animation, and simply when the direction is -90, walk left, and for the 90, walk right animation. At the same speed, when the direction is -180 or 180, we need the walk back animation. Also, we need the same setup for running animations. As you can see, our character animations are working perfectly. By holding the shift on your keyboard and moving the mouse, you can test the animations. Now we need 2 other blend spaces for the character. One of them is holding the bow, and another for the sword if you need it. So I will create them quickly. Create a 1D blending space for the right hand movements of the bow aiming animation. For the axis name, we can use bending. Maximum value should be 1, and we need just one grid division. To create poses for this blend space, open the aiming animation, then move the timeline to the first frame, and click on the Create Asset button, and from the Create Animation menu, select Current Pose, and choose a location and a name to save the file. Then move the timeline to the last frame and do the same steps again. Now we can use them inside the aiming blend space as the first and last animations. As you can see, we have control over the right hand animation. It's time to add animations into the Anim Graph. First of all, add a new state machine for the ground animation, and we can save it into a cache. In this state machine, we can separate the sprinting from other movements into another state. As you can see, we can use the isRunning variable as the rule to switch between the locomotion and sprinting. In locomotion, let's separate the equipped animations from non-equipped by using the Blend Poses by bool and connect the No Weapon blend space to the false pin. Now we can use the same node again to separate the sword animations from bow animations and connect the sword blend space to the true pin. but we need to move the hand for the aiming separately. Now add the layered blend per bone to blend the hand bending with other aiming animations, because in all other animations, the right hand is in default pose. To add the bone name, we need to blend from, in this case, spine_01, and we need 4 blend depth levels and enable the mesh space rotation. We need to use the default bow blend space as the base pose, and use the aiming blend space for the other pose. Then we need to connect the bow bending variable to the aiming blend space. Let's set up the sprinting state. We can use the blend poses by bool again, and then you can connect the sprinting animations as you can see to the nodes. If your animations have no slot, open one of them and add slot from the slot menu, as you can see. We need to use slot when playing anim montages. Now we can save the upper body animations into a new cache. To use the upper body cache, we can use the blend poses by bool node again. We want to use upper body animations when the character is moving and the playing animation is not in full body. To blend upper body animation, we can use the layered blend per bone node, and for the base pose we need the ground cache, and for the blend node we need the upper body cache. For the config, your bones names might be different, but you can find them easily in your skeleton. Make sure your config is similar to the Orisa, otherwise it won't work. Now directly connect the false node to the upper body cache. Let's store the result into another cache. We may need to add something on top of that in the future, and then connect the new cache into the final animation node. For now, the animation blueprint setup is done, and we need to get this class on our character. Open the Arissa character class file, and you can set the animation from this menu, as you can see. Or you can open the editor and then select the mesh and set the animation class. In the next step, let's set up the bow. First of all, open your bow asset and the arrow socket, then we can preview the arrow to test the socket direction. Now we can create the bow weapon class. Go to Weapons and then Guns folder and create a child blueprint class from the basebow_BP. Open the file and make sure the parent is basebow_BP. Open the gun config menu and set ammo per clip and initial clips to 1. You can set the targeting FOV to whatever you like. In this case, I set it to 75. And weapon tag is an important option. Set it to bow or any other name you like. We will use this tag in the tables. Set the weapon mesh, and then for the bow, we need to create a simple animation blueprint. Select the Anim instance as the parent class and bow skeleton as the target skeleton. Go to the event graph and add the begin play event. Now cast the owning actor to the base bow class and store it into a new variable. Now from the bow we can get access to the pawn owner. Now we need to update some values in each frame from bow. So first of all, check if the bow is valid or not. If it's not valid, try to get it again, otherwise we can get bending amount and store it into another variable. Now we need to read targeting value from the pawn. So first of all, check if the pawn is valid, or not, same as before. After that, we can get the targeting value. In the next step, we need to create a blend space from the bow firing animation. Open the firing animation and find the default position of the bow when the character is holding the arrow in her hand, and save it as animation pose as you can see. After that, use the last frame before firing as the final position of the bow. To use these two animations, we need to create a 1D blend space. For axis name, we can use blending, and for maximum value, we can set it to 1. And finally, we need just one grid. Now drag and drop the animation we made into the graph, as you can see. Go to Anim Graph and add the Blend Poses by Bool node. If the character is targeting, we need to update the bow animation using the bow bending variable. Otherwise, we can use the default aiming animation. Go back to the bow class and set the animation blueprint class. In the next step, we can create the projectile class. To create the arrow projectile, go to Projectiles and then Arrow folder and create a child blueprint class from the base arrow projectile BP. We can use a small value for hit detection collision. Now set the mesh arrow. We will show this when that arrow is in the character's hand. And make sure it has a collision. Otherwise, you can add the simple box collision from the collision menu. And finally, we need to select the particle that we showed to the player after the fire. You can find this particle in the Effects and then Projectiles folder. Now go back to the bow class and set the projectile class. In the last step for the bow class, we need to create the pickup class. Go to Items and then Weapons folder and create a child blueprint class from the base underscore weapon underscore pickup BP. Open the new class and select the mesh, and again, make sure your mesh has a collision. Then select the bow weapon class as the weapon class. Go back to the weapon class and select the pickup class. Now let's create the arrow pickup class. Go to Arrow folder and create a new child class from the base arrow item BP. Open it and select the mesh. Go to Class Defaults menu and select the Arrow class, also set the arrow scale again. And for the last step of the arrow, we can set the config, as you can see. You can use any value for them, but I found these values are great. Projectile tag is important. We will use this in the future. Also, we can move the mesh a little bit to back from the hit collision. Now let's connect every part together using the tables. First, we can add this arrow pickup into the arrows table. Go to this path, Data, Tables, and then Player folder, and open the T-Player arrow. Add a new row to the table. Row name should be the character tag plus projectile tag we used in the last step. Attach socket is the place where the arrow will attach to the character's hand, so we need to create a new socket on the character. Open the character skeleton and find the right hand bone and add a new socket. For the local transform, I'll use some values I found during my tests. Inventory attach socket is the place we attach the arrows after picking them up from the ground. We need to create a new socket on the character again. You can use the max count to limit the arrow counts in the inventory. We need to create an animation montage for drawing the arrow from the inventory, so let's create it. Before opening the animation, we need to copy two folders from the original project. From the original folder you've downloaded from the Epic Launcher, go to Content, Ultimate Character, and Blueprints folder, then copy the Animations folder to the same path in your new project. Then there's another animation folder inside the Data folder. Please copy that too. Now open the animation and set group to the upper body so we can mix this with the movement animations. Now we need to add a notify to the animation at the time we need to attach the arrow to the hand. Our montage is ready for the table. Select the Anim montage in the table and then set animation length. The next step is to select the arrow class we made in the previous steps. Open the UI menu and select the arrow icon and then set the icon size. And finally, we need just two UI actions for the equip or drop the arrow. In the next step, we need to set up the bow on the gun table. For the row name, use the character tag plus weapon tag. Create a new socket on the left hand to attach the weapon. Create another socket to attach the bow when it's in the inventory. Open the Animations menu. We need to create 3 anim montages for the equipping, unequipping of the bow, and also firing the arrow. Let's start with the equipping animation. Set the group to upper body. Find the bow pickup frame and add the equipping weapon anim notify. Also, don't forget to add the montage length into the table. Next, create the unequipping montage. Same as before, set the group to upper body, and then find the frame to add the anim notify. This time we need to change the notify type to unequip. Now we can add it to the table and also set the length. The last anim montage we need is for the firing. Set the gun class to the bow. Open the UI menu, select your icon for the bow, and set the size to display. We need 3 actions for equip, unequip, and drop. You can set the camera config however you like, or just simply copy the settings I used. Now for the final step, open your character again and add the attack types. We need one for the bow and another for the arrow. The arrow menu is useful if you have several types of arrow. For example, firing arrow, players can select them from the menu. Also, I want to set the default primary equip to bow so the player starts the game with a bow. And finally, add the bow tag to the guns menu. It's time to test the character at the level. First of all, we need to create a new level, then increase the size of the floor box. Go to the world setting and change the game mode class. Then open the game mode and change the spawn class to Orisa. Drag and drop arrow pickup in the level so the player can pick up arrows from the ground. Let me make a few copies of that. And press the play button. As you can see, the bow is equipped by default. I can test the unequip button now. And now we can pick up the arrows and test the bow. Thanks for watching this video, and please like and share the video, and subscribe to the channel to support us.